Okay, we are live right now with John Wright. John Wright has some experience with how 50% of California is ran. One of the issues that we've long talked about here for almost 8 years and been largely ignored was that California doesn't even own most of its land. Half of the land's owned by the federal government. It's force, and it's not managed well. We said that since 2015, over 6 years ago. Coincidentally, I just ran into another random Californian I've never met before, and he has some interesting stuff to share with us today, let's say. Sorry for my words leaving me. It's been a little bit of a long day. But John Wright, let me ask you, who are you? How long have you lived in California? And then we'll get into a little bit of your history, sir.
I was born in Bakersfield, 1946.
A Valley boy.
Yeah.
All right, like myself.
2 years later, we moved to Ventura. Lived there until I was 12, and then we moved to Davis. And I grew up in Davis. I now live for the last 21 years just west of Woodland, out in the country.
Okay.
That's me.
All right. So you have worked as I'm sure I'm going to get this wrong, but basically you worked with young people in forest fire management to some degree for a period of roughly 3 years for the federal government. Could you tell me what I'm getting wrong there, or roughly what exactly was your experience in this? And be as specific as possible if you can, sir.
Yeah, I was the work coordinator for the Young Adult Conservation Corps. It was formed by the Bureau of Reclamation, and it was an employment program for young adults 18 to 23 years old. And we had 250 young kids from all walks of life that we brought in, and most of them had no experience doing any of the stuff that we were doing. I was tasked with going out and finding projects for us to do on any public lands. We could work federal, state, city, didn't matter, as long as it had something to do with conservation. So we would, a lot of the work we did was at the Arboretum at UC Davis, but we worked up and down the state building trails, and from, a few times we got called out to work on forest fires. But we would bring people in to help train. One time we brought some lumberjacks in for chainsaw safety courses, and I would teach the young kids how to drive equipment and how to build things. My background was construction, so I taught them how to do concrete, and we actually built the camp at Lake Natomas out by Folsom. There is a group of buildings that now are pretty big. It's a pretty big operation, but we were there in the very beginning, and I don't know if any of the original buildings are still there, but I found some buildings in a warehouse that were left over from the Korean War, and I asked what they were going to do with them, and they said, yeah, we don't need them. I said, can I have them? They said, yeah. So I went around and taught these kids how to put up these buildings. We went all over the state, and we put them up for the different agencies, and they got a free building. It didn't cost them anything for labor. It didn't cost. All they had to do was buy materials, I believe. But we furnished the building, the labor. We would do the whole thing, and the kids loved it because they got to learn how to do electrical and plumbing and painting and drywall and the whole thing. I left after 3 years because I was getting frustrated with the way the federal government worked. I would try to do projects on federal land, and of course I had to get permission, so I would have a meeting with who I thought were the important people, and they couldn't make a decision. We had to bring in somebody else. So I would have this meeting. There would be 6 people in the room, and I'd have coffee and donuts and ready for them. They'd drink up the coffee and eat the donuts and say, there's nothing we can do. You're going to have to, somebody else at a higher level. And I would keep going higher and higher and higher. And I could never get anyone to make a decision so that we could move forward. So I started looking for projects off of federal lands where I could get answers and get things moving. And I finally, in my mind, this is my view. I'm sure somebody's going to debate me on this, but it seemed to me that if you're a federal employee, you don't get in trouble for doing nothing. You get in trouble for making a decision if it's wrong, and that goes in your file and affects your retirement. And I'm not like that. I make mistakes every day because that's how I learn. That's how all of these kids learn. I said, don't be afraid to make a mistake. I want you to go out and make a mistake every day. Come back and tell the rest of us what you did and then what you did to correct it. And took all the pressure off of them, and we got a lot of work done. I ran into Warren Roberts a few years after they had closed this program down. Like I say, I worked there for 3 years, and then a few years after I left, they closed the program down, and I was just flabbergasted. And I asked Warren, they closed that program down. I don't understand that. And he said, oh, I know why. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, you made them look bad because you would bring these kids in and they would just hit the ground running and get the job done. And it was embarrassing to them because they could not do the same thing with people that have been there for a whole career with all the experience and all the training and all the equipment, and they still didn't have the motivation, I guess. They were afraid to do anything for fear they would do it wrong. And
I want to make sure I'm saying this so that people can follow in here and tell me if I'm getting this wrong. If I'm getting anything wrong, I just met you. We've never met before. But the moment I heard your story, I was like, I've got to get this out because we've been saying the same thing at Yes California for years and years. And literally it was you saying the same thing. Sorry, my pained expression. But basically what I heard you say is you're working for the federal government. You're running a youth program and you ran it pretty well. And in fact, you ran it so well, it was efficient. It was operating well. Taxpayer money, returning services in a good manner. And the federal government shut that down hard because it made the rest of their other programs look inefficient. So rather than having efficiency and innovation, they said, let's shut the whole thing down so that we can keep our corrupt bureaucracy operating without other people poking fingers in it and thinking that we could do better. Am I getting this wrong? Am I saying things that you didn't mean?
No, this is what I feel. This is what I feel. This is what I experienced. And this is the reason I left the federal government. Wonderful retirement I could have had. And I chose to go back into construction world where I got paid for what I did. I was a contractor.
You were not willing to sell out your beliefs for a retirement package?
I was afraid I would end up an idiot. I didn't want that. I'm still mentoring kids.
They don't make them like you anymore, sir. They don't. There's so few people who are willing to do that these days.
Thank you.
They just are. You are a vanishing demographic, and it brings me nothing but horror and the deepest despair to say that.
A lot of the kids I run into from time to time, I've kept touch with some of them. And recently I was at a birthday party, and I talked with a bunch of them. And they all said every time they went to apply for a job, as soon as they put that they had graduated from this program, the Young Adult Conservation Corps, they were hired.
So we're talking about wayward youth. You're helping to get them
Yes.
get their life straightened out. Maybe things didn't happen the right way they should have. Maybe their parents weren't there the way they should. They're getting a second chance, and it's actually working. And
Yes.
you're providing services to the public at an efficient level using the amount of tax money that you get. And the federal government said, you're making everything else look bad. You're making it look like government can be efficient. So our solution is not to learn from you, but to shut it down.
That is my opinion.
Okay. Let's go to part two. Let's go to part two. Because this is not going to be radical stuff for a lot of the Yes California people, 160,000 people across multiple platforms and email, and also the 1/3 of Californians in February 2017 who said they were interested in independence with the election of the orange one, who will not be named. The other thing that you said that grabbed me a lot was you were talking about the process of fighting a forest fire. And you described, I believe, the green trucks and the brown trucks, or the green trucks and the red trucks. What happened? What did you see? What happened?
Okay, we were called out to a forest fire down. It was in Ventura County, and we went up to the. It was in a rural area up off of the Grapevine, and when we showed up, they had paper sleeping bags for us, and within hours they started rolling in equipment. They had kitchens, they had bedrooms, bunkhouses for the men and for the women. They had bathrooms, showers. It was a full-blown city set up within hours. And they had their air traffic control to coordinate the helicopters coming in and out. And I don't remember what year this was. It was in the 80s sometime. And but it was so organized. I was very impressed with the organization. And at one point, the person in charge of the fire for Cal Fire said, "Okay, the fire has reached a certain size, and so now we have to turn it over to the feds." He called it the forest circus, is what he said. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, the red trucks will leave and the green trucks will come in. And I said, okay, fine, whatever. And it was a major, major difference in the organization. And I really wish that the red trucks had stayed there.
So California's fighting the fire, and then at some point there's some rule or something that says the fire's so big now the federal government has to take over. I'm imagining it's a law, maybe it's practice, some sort of standard. But at some point, no, fire's too big, you have to leave. And what you noticed was that when it was up to us Californians fighting the fire, we were on it.
Right. They were using contractors to all of this, the kitchens and all of that stuff that came in, those were contractors. And they weren't messing around because they got paid for doing a job. And I'm convinced that is one of the best ways to save this state is to contract more things out.
And that's not what the feds did. So when the feds took over, it was a less organized operation. So folks, what he's saying is,
I don't know who was. I don't know if they contracted out or not. It didn't seem like it. It seemed like they were doing it all themselves. I may be wrong, but it wasn't as organized.
What fire is this?
Pardon me?
What fire? What was the name of the fire? What year?
I don't remember the name of the fire, but it was in Ventura County.
In what year?
In the 80s.
Okay.
1980 something.
All right.
And it was a real eye opener for me to see. And I thought, well, why did you need to leave? You had the thing under control. You were getting a handle on it, and all of a sudden you turn it over, and it just seemed like a lot of chaos. And
yeah. So let me run some numbers by you. Given your experience, you're a Californian, you've lived here. We've never met. But folks, he backed up what I was saying. I was talking to one of the candidates we met in the recall. Yes, California did debates with recall candidates. We did more debates with any recall candidates. Some of those people have reached out to more people. John was somebody who believed in California secession. I've never met him before in my life. John, have we met before? Have I paid you money to appear on film?
No.
And I bet you haven't seen.
And I wouldn't accept it if you did.
So Yes, California, what we had said, and that's what we had said was that in February 2017, it showed a third were willing to secede, and 47.5 were willing to discuss it. And we never saw that go away. We saw, oh, Biden won, maybe the pressure's off, but we said the amount of Californians who thought that it might be a good idea for us to become a nation or secede is still there. They never stopped believing. And here you are. I've never met you. You've had these thoughts. I hypothesized that people like you were around, and now I meet you. Occasionally pop up. Another person we met with, Fuji Shiora. Another one was the museum owner out of El Segundo. So there's these random Californians around who are like, I still believe, I still think. And the thing that you saw, correct me if I'm wrong, is you saw how the federal government provides for us. Half our land is federal. You literally saw them attempting to manage it, and you saw them doing inefficiency, and then you saw them doing a horrible job compared to California. And let me ask you, when you see California forest fires burning down every single year to record heights, whether it's George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Republicans or Democrats, we seem to have these gigantic fires bigger than ever. Do you think that's a Democrat-Republican problem, that our forests go up in smoke every year, or maybe that's a Fed problem? What's your opinion, sir?
I think it's a Fed problem. I know that we're in a drought, but I worked on a water project here in Yolo County where there was a fellow he had enough money to do this project, and he took in the foothills over here, and he discovered that he could build a reservoir if it was under a certain number of acre feet of water. I don't remember what that number was, but he stayed just under that and built an earthen dam and captured the water and then fed it down into a reservoir. And so he had plenty of water during the summer to water his trees and crops and whatnot. And also we ran a pipeline from Cache Creek into that reservoir. So he was able to pull water from two different venues, I guess you'd call it. And so he was able to do it without the environmental impact statement because he stayed below a certain size. Now, the federal government has quit building dams and creating water for us, which we really need. And this is a solution. And why they are not doing it, I have no idea. But if we were our own country, I would be pushing to do that, and I would help you. I'd show you how to do it. And we would have these dams all along the foothills, all the way down to Southern California, and they'd have plenty of water, and so would we.
I'm from Fresno, and we've long fought for dams. I believe in dams. I don't.
We can do it. We don't need the federal government to do that.
Well, exactly. And most of the dams were built by, a lot of the dams were built by California. A lot of the irrigation infrastructure was built by California. People say that's the feds. No, the feds built some after we already started the project, and 2/3 of it was built by Californians with our own money and our own sweat and blood and tears. So yes, we can absolutely do it.
Most of the projects that the feds built, there was a battle between the Bureau of Reclamation and the Army Corps of Engineers. And so it was difficult getting anything built because they both thought they should have been in control.
When I tell you that Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor and he yelled at American President W. Bush for forest fire support and didn't get it, and then the forest burned down. And when I tell you that Arnold asked for support from the federal government with the next president, and we still had massive forest fires. And when I say that now we're looking at how the Trump administration did not pay federal forest fires enough so that we could attract enough federal forest fires to fight the fires, and that now we're looking at the Joe Biden administration did literally the exact same thing. They are not paying adequate wages to attract enough people, and they have not provided enough money for staff. Now, if you type in Joe Biden and California forest fires, you're going to see he is so awesome because he says climate change is real. And so therefore he believes climate change is real and the forest fires will happen. Awesome. That has nothing to do with allocation of budget resources. So we already have in the news that Joe Biden did not, in 8 months in presidency, raise the amount of money that he's paying the federal forest fires so that we could attract more reasonable wages, because the economy is more expensive here than it is in other states. He didn't do that. So we're going into fire season without enough staff because they're not resourced enough. That's Joe Biden. It was the same thing underneath Trump. I can take you back 2 decades ago, and we'll see Donald Schwarzenegger having the same debate with W. Bush. Do you see a pattern?
Okay. I've heard people say, if we secede from the Union, who's going to take care of us? Where's our big brother that's going to take care of us? Well, if we quit giving taxes, we're probably the largest donator of taxes to the federal government. We pay for all these wars. We pay for all these people that they buy off. We pay for all of that stuff. If we quit doing that and started hiring contractors to do the work and hire more people to fight fires and better equipment, we could afford all of that. And we could put enough money into our kitty, and we wouldn't need a big brother anymore. We would grow up and take care of ourselves. We did it before.
Yeah. Let me ask you, if we're talking about secession, let me ask you. A lot of people said, well, California, you're liberal, you don't know how to manage this, you don't know how to manage that. And I go, well, that's not exactly true, but let's say some of it's true. Mm-hmm. I remember when I moved out of my parents' house and I got my own apartment, boy, there was a learning curve.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was like, I have to throw my own trash. I have to pay the power bill, or the power bill's not on. And, I was maybe a little bit spoiled. My mom was, one of those hover parents or whatever. So, but I learned quick, and I didn't do things a year later after I had to pay for everything and take care of everything as I did when I lived in my mama's house. And I was always thinking, if we were independent, you're going to have the same time to be an adult moment where you're like, I'm sorry, we don't get to do things like that. You have to now do everything. And I got to tell you, the moment you went from someone taking care of you to the moment you had to do it all on your own, your mind shifted. You woke up, you got adult pants on real quick, and you started making the changes you need to do. Now, every single adult I've talked to has gone through that same experience. Do you think that might be something that would happen here in California? It's like suddenly we're independent. Oh my God, there's no one else to blame. It's just
absolutely us. We would have to grow up, but we would grow up.
My dog. All right. Federal government doesn't take care of our land. What about the fact that half of our land is federal?
Why do they own our land? It's California. We're perfectly capable of managing this.
Well, I mean, and the thing that gets me, let me ask you, every year we have forest fires, and I always point out to people, and yes, California has been the only group doing this for years. And then only when Donald Trump insulted everybody did they finally start pointing out some of the things that we had said. So we've been saying this for years. We still say it. The only time the news ever printed stuff that sounded like this was when Donald Trump would write a tweet slamming California specifically. And then and only then they would admit this fact. 80% of the forest fires are on federal land every year. It's not state land. People go, well, it's state and fed. No, 10, 15% state, maybe 10% is private. 90, 80, 65, 70% or something like that is all federal. 80% of the forest fires every year going back 20 years on federal property. So I'm looking at you and I'm going, hey, John, I got a store, and the previous store manager ran that store well. And then we got a new store manager, and all of his products are not very good, and the candy's stale, and the prices are too high. Do I keep that store manager, or do I fire him because I know you can do a better job? What's logical, sir?
Yeah, get a new manager.
So we
try to get the other one back. Would be the
yeah. So they own half our land, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
40 states, 10% or less is owned by the feds. 40 states, 10% or less is owned by the feds. That is a normal American situation. Here in California, it's 50%.
Yeah.
But that's fair. And then it burns down every year, and then they don't provide us resources adequate to deal with the problem for the last 2 decades, and that goes right up through 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Sounds like we're screwed no matter what we do, as long as it's part of the USA. Am I getting this wrong?
Well, I think I've been thinking that for a long time.
And and we've never met before. We've never met before. We just randomly met, talked today. Happen to agree. That's pretty awesome. I'm going to stop there. I'll have more questions for you in the future. I'd like to invite you to a future Yes CA meeting. I'll email you and I'll send you a copy of this. I just wanted to interview you because when I was talking to you with Jackie, I was like, oh my God, let's get this out there right now. This is because you get these little snippets of data points, and we are dedicated, Yes California, to get those out to the public. And we realized that if you don't move quickly, sometimes you lose those opportunities because they don't talk about this in the news. I don't see newspaper articles where they go, the state service is technically better than the feds. The feds don't manage it. Why are we letting this situation go on for decades? Forest fires are only going to get bigger. Climate change is only going to get worse. And the federal government has shown repeatedly they can't manage it. We moved the world on climate change. Climate change regulation got started by us. Why we need someone else to tell us how to do it? We know best. We did it. Sorry, Valley voice is coming out, but you're a Valley guy, so you know.
Yeah.
So here's the 2 points. The federal government shut down a government program because it was run efficiently, and California is more organized to fight forest fires than the federal government. We're talking to a man who literally saw it with his own eyes. Now, while I haven't seen these things, they back up the analysis that we have provided here with you at CalExit for years. It's not ran well. That's why it burns down all the time. That's why they don't fund it properly. And that's why every single governor over 25 years has complained about the lack of federal assistance. Now, perhaps you won't see that in the mainstream news, but when you look beneath the veneer, it's all there, baby. It's all true.
You might want to talk with some of the ranchers about their experience with dealing with the BLM and some of those other groups.
That's a great idea. I'll reach out to you about that.
One last thing I'd like to tell you about. I went to Burning Man one year, and Burning Man it's held on federal land in the Black Rock Desert. Are you familiar with Burning Man?
Yeah, everyone in Cali knows about Burning Man.
Yeah. Okay. So I went, just curious, and it was. I forget what the cost was. It was a lot of money. It was like $1,500 for a ticket to get in there, and you bring everything. There's nothing provided by the federal government other than them running around in their trucks. They have outrageous rules for a bunch of people that are just going out in the desert to play. They would pull people over if they had a bicycle on the back of their car that was partially covering the license plate. They would pull them over and give them a ticket. They would, if you were going more than 5 miles an hour on the playa itself, they would give you a ticket, while they would drive 55, 60 miles an hour in their pickups. They wanted, I forget what the fee is now. It's something like $6 million they charged Burning Man to have this event, and they provide nothing but the land that we own. That's just another example of some of the things that they do. We could be letting people go out there for $10 and save that money, put it in the people's pocket, or they could pay that amount, and that would go to the state of California, and it would be used for something reasonable. Other than there was an article in the Reno Gazette about some of the demands that the BLM was putting on Burning Man, where they wanted an ice cream machine, and they wanted trailers for them to sleep in, and they wanted food service for the people that worked there, and it just went on and on and on top of the millions of dollars that they charged for the permit. While all the people that go to the party bring all their own stuff and they share it with each other.
Yeah.
I felt that was abusive.
I do too. So it's our ground. They took it from us, and then they charge us to use it while providing no resources. Whereas, a lot of these parks are for public enjoyment. So why can't you let people enjoy them?
It's our taxpayers that maintain them. Why do we have to pay to get in?
Yeah, and just to show that it's not just us. So the indigenous people who actually own the land, hey, I get it. We're not going to go back in time and fix all that. I get it. But technically they do. Well, there was a person called Cobell, and she sued the federal government for 20 years until she finally got her case to the Supreme Court. And what she said was, it's our land. And you have been doing leasing and rights and drilling and permits and stuff. So how about you give us some of that money? And Barack Obama said no. Eric Holder said it was a great day for justice. I'm literally quoting him, when their $265 billion lawsuit was reduced to $30 million. And they were told this is justice for the genocide and wiping out of the Native people. And that happened with the African-American president and the African-American attorney general, who both saluted the decision as a great day. So the Fed takes advantage of us. They take advantage of the Native people. And even when the good one is president, they will screw over the indigenous in a way that you can't make up for in 2 centuries. So they screw everybody over. No one ever gets treated fairly. So, hey, why don't we give the land back to us in California, and then we could actually treat the indigenous more fairly than they've been treated, giving them a percentage of the profits, which the federal government won't even do. I bring up the Cobell decision. Nobody who likes Obama is aware of that. Nobody who likes Obama is aware this even happened. I bring it up. They're like, what? Huh? No, he would never do that. Federal court. Case law. It's documented. I didn't see it on MSNBC. Okay, well, I'm sorry. Here's a court case. Here's the document. See, that says federal court laws. It's happened. He got screwed. They screwed over indigenous people for 2 centuries of genocide and wiping out. What luck do we have? Well, we're actually a little bit more powerful. But I just want to say to you, these are not good actors who are not managing it better for us. It's, I took it, it's mine. I'm the mafia. I make all the profit. You get nothing. Go screw yourself. That's what I'm saying. When I saw the way Obama treated the indigenous, when I saw the way that Obama and Bush and Biden and Trump all treated us here in California, I'm in Fresno. Sometimes the forest fires are so bad the sky gets grayed out. It'll be summer and you can't see the sun. So I live in it. I had friends who lost their cabins, burnt to the ground, $500,000 in damage. They're not coming back from that. And then they were banned from seeing their home so that Gavin Newsom and Kamala could do a photo op about how they care. But Gavin would not meet any of the people whose homes he burned down. I literally know a guy his cabin burned down. He wanted to go see it. He was told, no, you don't get to go see it. It's on federal property. And then he watched on TV as Gavin Newsom stomped on his front lawn talking about how bad it was. And Newsom never returned his call or ever spoke to him. So we need to be independent from the federal government, and we goddamn well need that epiphany that's only going to come from putting on our big boy pants and not having mama and daddy take care of us. Am I wrong here, John?
Nope. I'm with you.
That's my mama yelling at me to go help my daddy out. So I'm going to have to go. I don't need an angry Mexican woman on me. So
it's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. I will call you back. If you ever lived with a Mexican woman, you don't want them on your back. So I'm going to go take care of that. John, you're a good man. I will call you back for another interview, but let me go handle some domestic crises right now.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Bye.